What if I told you the very thing making you anxious, the silence, the delay, the distance, isn't rejection, but proof she's already emotionally involved in a way that scares her? Most men get this wrong, completely wrong. They see a woman step back and they panic. They assume she's playing games. They assume she's testing them. Or worse, they assume she's losing interest. But what they don't realize is this. When a woman is truly invested, she doesn't always move closer. Sometimes, she pulls away. And that contradiction, it's where most men lose her. Before we go deeper, I need you to do something simple. Like this video and subscribe. Not for me, but for yourself. Because what you're about to understand will change the way you read women forever. Listen carefully. A woman who is casually interested will make things easy. She'll respond quickly. She'll be light, predictable, low risk. There's no emotional weight, no internal conflict. She flows because she doesn't care enough to fear losing control. But when she does care, everything shifts. Her behavior becomes inconsistent, not because she's playing with you, but because she's battling herself. One part of her wants to move closer, to trust, to open up. The other part is terrified. Terrified of being hurt, terrified of giving too much, terrified that if she shows you how much she feels, you might take it for granted. So she hesitates. She pulls back right when things feel intense. She becomes harder to read right when you think you are getting closer. And you misinterpret it. You think she's testing you, but she's actually protecting something fragile inside her. Here's the truth most men aren't ready to hear. When a woman is deeply invested, she becomes more careful, not more obvious. She watches you more closely. She analyzes your words. She measures your consistency. Because now, you matter. And when someone matters, the risk becomes real. So the next time you feel that shift, that distance, that confusion, don't rush to label it as disinterest, because sometimes the woman you think is playing hard to get is actually fighting not to fall too fast for you. You see, the moment a woman starts to feel something real for you, her instincts change in ways most men completely misunderstand. She doesn't become more predictable, she becomes more aware. And that awareness? It creates a tension inside her that you can actually feel, if you're paying attention. At first, everything felt easy. Conversations flowed. She laughed effortlessly. She showed up fully without hesitation. But then something shifted, and you felt it. The pauses got longer, the replies less frequent, the energy slightly guarded, and your mind immediately went to the worst place. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. She started imagining a future with you. Not in a dramatic fairy tale way, but in subtle flashes. What it would feel like to trust you, to depend on you, to let you see her beyond the surface. And the moment those thoughts appeared, fear followed right behind them. Because now, it's no longer casual. Now there's something to lose. So instead of leaning in, she slows down. She begins to question everything. Not just you, but herself. Am I moving too fast? Can I trust him? What if I get hurt? These questions don't come from disinterest. They come from emotional investment that suddenly feels too real. And this is where most men make a critical mistake. They chase harder. They double text. They demand clarity. They try to fix the distance as quickly as possible. But what they don't understand is, pressure doesn't create safety, it destroys it. When a woman feels overwhelmed emotionally, she doesn't need intensity. She needs space to process. Not space because she doesn't want you, but space because she's trying to understand how deeply she does want you. If you crowd her in that moment, she doesn't feel reassured. She feels like she's losing control. And control, to a woman who is starting to care deeply, is everything. So instead of chasing, the man who understands this dynamic does something very different. He observes. He stays grounded. He doesn't react to her temporary distance as if it's permanent rejection. Because he knows something most men don't. A woman who feels nothing doesn't need space. Only a woman who feels something real does. There's a moment, subtle, almost invisible, where her behavior stops being about attraction and starts being about emotional risk. And if you miss this moment, you will misread everything that comes after. Because this is where she begins to test, not you, but the situation, the connection, the stability of what she feels with you. She might take longer to reply, not because she forgot about you, but because she's watching how you handle the silence. She might cancel a plan, not because she doesn't want to see you, but because she's observing whether your interest is steady or conditional. She might seem slightly colder, not because her feelings disappeared, but because she's trying to see if your energy collapses when hers shifts. And here's the part that's hard to accept. She's not looking for perfection, she's looking for emotional consistency. A man who reacts emotionally to every small change becomes unpredictable in her eyes. And unpredictability does not feel safe. So when you overthink her delayed reply, when you send that second message trying to check in, when your tone subtly shifts from calm to anxious, she notices. Not consciously, not like she's keeping score, but emotionally. And that emotional signal tells her something important, whether you are grounded or whether you are easily shaken. A woman who is deeply invested doesn't want to feel like she's the center of your emotional stability. She wants to feel like you choose her, not like you depend on her, because dependency feels heavy, and heaviness creates pressure. So what does she do? She leans back just enough to see what happens. And most men fail this moment, not because they're not good enough, but because they don't understand what's actually being asked of them. She's not asking for more effort. She's asking for emotional strength, the kind that doesn't flinch when things aren't perfectly smooth, the kind that doesn't panic when there's a little uncertainty, because to her, that strength translates into safety, and safety is the foundation of deep emotional connection. So when she pulls back slightly, becomes a little harder to read, a little less available, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it exist. Because in that space, she's quietly deciding if you're the kind of man she can trust with her deeper emotions. Now here's where it gets even more misunderstood. When a woman is deeply invested in you, she starts to care about how you see her, not just on the surface, but on a level that makes her feel exposed. And exposure creates vulnerability. So instead of showing you everything she feels, she begins to filter herself. Not because she's fake, but because she's suddenly aware that your opinion matters more than she expected. She replays conversations in her mind. She wonders if she said too much or too little. She questions whether she came off too interested or not interested enough. And while you're sitting there thinking she's pulling away, she's actually trying to protect how she's perceived by you. This is the paradox. The more she cares, the more she becomes cautious. The more she feels, the less obvious it becomes. Because now, there's something at stake, her emotional image in your eyes. And here's where men often sabotage everything without realizing it. They start seeking reassurance. They ask things like, "Are you okay?" Or, "Did I do something wrong?" Or, "You feel different." On the surface, those questions seem harmless, but underneath, they carry a subtle pressure. They force her to define something she's still trying to understand herself. And when she feels that pressure, she does what anyone would do when they're not fully certain yet. She retreats further. Not because she wants distance from you, but because she needs distance from the expectation. You see, a woman who is emotionally invested doesn't want to feel like she's being analyzed. She wants to feel like she's being experienced. There's a difference. Analysis makes her self-conscious. Experience allows her to relax into what she feels naturally. So when you constantly try to figure her out, you unintentionally make her more guarded. But when you remain present, calm and grounded, you create an environment where she doesn't have to second-guess herself, and that's powerful. Because the moment a woman stops feeling like she has to manage your perception of her is the moment she begins to show you who she really is. So if she seems a little more careful, a little more reserved, a little more aware of how she comes across, don't mistake that for distance. That's what it looks like when her feelings are no longer casual. That's what it looks like when you actually matter. There's another layer most men never see, and it's the emotional conflict happening inside her when she's deeply invested in you. Because at this stage, she's not just reacting to you anymore. she's managing herself. Part of her wants to move forward, to open up, to let the connection grow without overthinking. But another part of her is holding the brakes. Not because she doesn't trust you at all, but because trust for her is built gradually. And once it deepens, it becomes something she protects instinctively. So you'll notice something confusing. She can be warm one day and slightly distant the next. Engaged in conversation, then suddenly more quiet. Interested, but not fully consistent in how she expresses it. And if you don't understand the psychology behind this, you'll assume she's losing interest. But in reality, she's managing emotional pacing. She's trying to prevent herself from becoming too attached too quickly, because attachment without certainty feels risky to her. So she regulates her behavior. She slows herself down. She creates just enough distance to stay emotionally balanced. Not to push you away, but to avoid losing herself too fast in something that feels important. And this is where your response becomes critical. If you chase, she feels the imbalance. If you panic, she feels the instability. If you demand clarity too early, she feels pressured. But if you remain steady, calm, and unaffected by these natural fluctuations, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. That you are not shaken by uncertainty, that you are not dependent on immediate validation, that your emotional state is not controlled by her every move, and that, to her subconscious mind, is deeply attractive. Because now, instead of feeling like she has to carry the emotional weight of the connection, she feels like she can relax into it. A man who understands this doesn't try to speed her up. He allows her to come closer at her own pace, while maintaining his own center. And ironically, that's what makes her feel safe enough to eventually open up more. Because when she senses that you are stable, consistent, and not easily thrown off, her internal conflict begins to ease. And when that happens, her guard doesn't just drop suddenly. It softens, gradually, naturally, in a way that feels real to her, not forced. And that's when the connection starts to deepen in a way that's no longer uncertain, but intentional. At this point, something subtle but very important begins to happen. She starts to evaluate you not just as a person she's talking to, but as a man she could potentially trust long term. And this evaluation changes everything about how she behaves. She becomes more observant, more selective with her words, more intentional with her energy. Because now, she's not just thinking about attraction, she's thinking about alignment. Does he stay consistent when things are unclear? Does he respect space without withdrawing emotionally? Does he remain steady when I'm not at my most expressive? These aren't questions she asks out loud. They're questions she answers through experience with you. And every interaction becomes data for her subconscious mind. So when she goes quiet for a bit, she's not necessarily disconnecting, she's processing. When she doesn't immediately match your energy, she's not rejecting you. She's measuring how you handle emotional neutrality. And here's where most men unknowingly disrupt the process. They interpret her slower pace as a problem to fix. They try to reignite intensity, push for closeness, or seek reassurance to bring things back. But from her perspective, nothing is broken. She's simply transitioning from initial attraction into something deeper and more meaningful. And that transition requires a different kind of energy, not urgency, not pressure, but stability. Because when a woman is evaluating you for something real, she's not looking for the man who reacts the fastest. She's looking for the man who remains the most consistent over time. The man whose behavior doesn't fluctuate wildly based on her mood or availability. The man who doesn't lose his center when things feel uncertain. That kind of presence communicates emotional maturity, and emotional maturity is one of the strongest signals of long-term compatibility. So instead of trying to win her back during moments of distance, understand what those moments actually represent. They are not setbacks, they are checkpoints. Moments where she's silently asking herself whether the connection feels stable enough to continue investing her emotions into. And your role in that process is not to accelerate her decision, but to demonstrate through your consistency that there is no instability for her to fear. Because when she feels that steadiness over time, her hesitation decreases, her comfort increases. And what once felt like guarded interest starts to transform into something more open, more natural, and more deeply rooted. So let's bring everything together, because this is where clarity replaces confusion. When you think she's playing hard to get, you're usually looking at the surface behavior, not the emotional reality underneath it. Distance doesn't always mean disinterest. Silence doesn't always mean absence of feeling. And inconsistency doesn't automatically mean she's pulling away from you. In many cases, it means the opposite. It means she's trying to manage emotions that have already begun to matter. It means she's pacing herself so she doesn't lose control of how quickly she's becoming attached. It means she's evaluating whether the connection feels stable enough to trust with something deeper. But here's the truth that will protect you moving forward. You should never chase someone who is uncertain while abandoning your own stability in the process. Because the moment you start reacting emotionally to every shift in her behavior, you stop being someone she can rely on and start becoming someone who is also unstable. And instability on both sides doesn't build attraction. It creates tension without direction. A grounded man understands this balance. He doesn't overinterpret every pause. He doesn't assume every delay as rejection. He doesn't let temporary distance define his perception of the entire connection. Instead, he remains consistent. He communicates when appropriate. He respects space without withdrawing his value. And most importantly, he stays aligned with his own life, goals, and emotional center. Because that's what allows a woman to feel safe enough to come closer without feeling pressured. And when she feels that safety over time, her behavior naturally becomes more open, more expressive, more consistent. Not because you forced it, but because you created the kind of environment where she didn't feel the need to protect herself from losing control. So the next time you find yourself wondering what her distance means, pause. Don't react immediately. Observe the bigger pattern. Because sometimes the very behavior that confuses you the most is the clearest sign that you've already reached a level of emotional significance that can't be ignored. And if you learn to recognize that, you stop chasing uncertainty and start responding with clarity, strength, and self-respect. That's the difference between a man who gets stuck guessing and a man who understands exactly where he stands, regardless of how she behaves in the moment.